Hello everyone, welcome to this week's DevOps Chat. I'm really pleased to have with me Finbarr Joy, who is going to be discussing with us the organisational structure and culture that supports DevOps, and it's also a topic he's going to be talking about in a few weeks' time at Cloud and DevOps World. So hi Finbarr, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
Now before we get started on that topic, which I think's a really interesting area to talk about, perhaps you could give us a little bit of history about your background, what you've done in the past, and what you're doing now, and what your interests are.
Okay, yeah. So I think over 20 years now, I'm afraid to say, in the technology industry. Bulk of that was working in a variety of consultancies. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of years early in my career with Netscape. So involved in the whole kind of first wave of .com rollouts. That was great fun. I'll be honest with you, I probably spent the entirety of my career trying to recreate that moment. Over the last 7 years now, increasingly getting involved in, I guess what you would call corporate transformations. So across the floor into the managerial suite, and more involved in organisational design now, and a series now of organisational transformations, typically around the DevOps model.
Wow, okay, so lots of experience, starting in quite a technical role, am I right?
That's right, yeah. I was, for 3/4 of my career, predominantly hands-on tech.
Yep, wow, fantastic. Now, the talk you're giving at Cloud and DevOps World is Dissolve Your IT Structure and Implement DevOps Successfully, if I've
got that
right. Fantastic. So maybe you could just tease people a little bit and give them an idea of what topics you're covering in that.
So it's really looking at the need to almost get rid of what was formerly an IT organisation for those people working in the more traditional structures, and focus more on multidisciplinary teams. So almost taking for granted the core technology aspects of what makes DevOps work. So those classic two silos of development and operations. And going beyond that, actually, to create truly multidisciplinary teams, where we also include elements of some of the former business functions, such as marketing and product. So you do genuinely have truly multidisciplinary teams. Over time, you'll find that what was formerly a great big hierarchical silo and very distinct IT organisation has pretty much disappeared, and you now have instead multifunctional product teams. So it's really about the pursuit of that model, and it's somewhat provocative, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, that maybe you've succeeded when you can no longer point at a thing called IT. Although I do respect there's always going to need to be somebody to provide the kit and the infrastructure, but I think it's a healthy kind of attitude and a healthy kind of target to set.
And so what's really interesting for me there, kind of straight away, is because I think with DevOps, because of the name, people often think, well, this is about getting developers and operations people onto the same team or collaborating more closely.
Sure.
But you mentioned actually there's more to it than just developers and operations. There's a whole other set of stakeholders. So can you talk a bit more about that and maybe why it's important?
So I think that reflects where we are. So if there is a DevOps community, I think that reflects the relative maturity. The practices behind DevOps are at least 10 years in maturity now, if not 15 plus, whether you relate to core agile even. But the core elements of, combining team members in collaborative structures, enabling feedback between different pieces of work and different practitioners, and always looking at the flow of work, making the flow of work as productive as possible. Once you've kind of cracked that model, if you've cracked it for what was formerly IT, why wouldn't you pursue it in the wider business? Because I think that's when you genuinely get compound traction. Otherwise, you're left with, if you like, a highly spinning cog in the technology department or the IT department, but the rest of the organisation is still lumbering through silos. So I think reflecting on where we are in 2017, DevOps needs to be a business-wide initiative. It should not be just an IT team or technology initiative. I just think the practices are good practices for organisational design, whether you're doing it in the IT organisation or throughout the broader organisation.
Yeah, yeah. Now, and there's something you touched on there, which you used the word flow. So again, I suppose, I think what you said was trying to emphasize this, flow of work.
That's right.
From I suppose from the source, whether that's an internal business stakeholder or the customer, right through to something working, deployed, in production, being used. So what sort of techniques have you found in the past help to get people focused on that end-to-end flow?
So I think there's some significant overlaps with the whole lean startup approach here, where if you can mobilize a team to focus on a very short-term goal, you start to get lots of things for free. So you certainly get prioritization for free in respect of, well, if we've got to get something in front of a customer within a couple of weeks, then we need to start getting really certain about exactly what that is. So we can't be doing the great big long-winded exhaustive requirements analysis exercise that we might have had historically. We get straight to the heart of exactly what is it that's going to make the difference that we need to demonstrate to customers. So the technique of a very short-term timescale and creating a new team identity. So not allowing, if you like, the silo behaviours to mobilise, but creating a multidisciplinary team identity together with that short-term milestone gives you an awful lot. It starts giving you great collaboration. So, people quickly figure out they need to work together as a combined team to hit what is a very aggressive milestone. So that's the key mechanic. We borrow a lot from the lean startup model.
I was going to say, can you, because some people won't be familiar or may not be familiar with lean startup. And do you know what, I could easily be wrong, but I think you're either the first person to mention it or the first. I think maybe Mike Burrows mentioned it in the very first DevOps chat, but I think you might be the first. So just a kind of brief idea of what lean startup is and what it's all about.
So I think I always get the pronunciation wrong, but I think it's Eric Ries, a book called The Lean Startup. And that proposes a model around the first thing you should do is identify what it is you want to test with your customer. Do that quickly, and then mobilize test and learn, so continuous test and learn practices from that point. So the kind of healthy element of that is the focus on the customer outcome, and then the immediate focus on test and learn practices. So it's a great discipline for improving customer feedback driven outcomes. And I see a very big overlap. For me, they're kind of overlapping Venn circles between agile, lean, and DevOps. They're kind of, for me, all facets of the same thing, interpreted from a different point of view. But that mechanism around organizing work and a short-term outcome driven by customer feedback, I think is hugely supportive, because then the way that DevOps underpins that is you've got the continuous flow, continuous delivery allows you to be able to prime that model and have those releases coming subsequently quickly.
And just to be absolutely clear, when you talk about a test and learn cycle, those tests, we're not talking about technical tests looking for
not at all.
It's testing that what you've produced for the customer delivers.
That's right. We have a hypothesis. We have a hypothesis of what we believe our feature or our differentiation needs to be. We test that hypothesis as quickly as possible. We reduce the exposure to a very long-winded development cycle where you find out too late whether or not this is going to be fit for purpose for the market. It does give you another set of alternative problems. So you find out very quickly what the customer wants. It's actually very, very difficult to then scale that up. So whereas a traditional model would be to build a great big project staffed with, squadrons of teams to build everything and get everything done, if you like, and that scales kind of growing throughout that. The challenge with this one is you start very, very small, willfully so. Once you've got something that works, and it is actually quite a challenge to grow that quickly enough. But in respect of ensuring you're building the right thing, ensuring that you're on the right path, and I've certainly found it to be the most successful model.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. And just, you mentioned earlier that parts of your talk are tongue-in-cheek and parts are provocative.
Sure.
And I think you also mentioned that in some ways the ultimate goal is that no one should be able to point at something and call it the IT function
Absolutely.
anymore. Which I imagine, could be quite a threatening idea for people who work in an IT function.
Absolutely.
So I suppose, could we just, maybe before we finish off, could you just talk a little bit about how, do people feel threatened, and how you can manage that if you're trying to get an organisation to change?
So sometimes, yes. So I think the DevOps world as well, what it also brings is better skills blending. So you tend to have fewer specialists, individual specialists, and you have more generalists. So, the classic DevOps can do both.
Yeah.
That means you start to tinker with what were formerly very distinct and very siloed role boundaries. Some people have kind of come to expect that in their career structures, and they find that reassuring. So it can be somewhat, I guess, threatening, but certainly it causes doubt around what it means for your career if you're mobilizing down this model. If everybody's an engineer, then what's the grade progression? But I think the balance on that, the plus side of it, if you like, what most good technologists appreciate is that the scope of the work is far more interesting. You're actually broadening your influence. You're broadening truly broadening the breadth of your skill set. The more you can reach across the DevOps cycle. We used to have people who did ops and they did nothing more than twiddle the dials. People who did dev and did nothing more than a short piece of development. When you do blur those, then the work is an awful lot more interesting. And then similarly, that whole pattern of bringing the awareness and the delivery to the customer more immediate to the team. So the team understands the outcome that they're working directly to. I think most teams find that a lot more interesting cycle of work than being, if you like, the IT department buried down in the bowels of the organisation, and it's actually a product entity that works with the customer. It's a far better model in terms of engagement.
And it's interesting. That's a topic that's come up a few times where we've had people talking about motivating teams and what motivates people, and that a big part of it is that with DevOps you have a better chance of frequently seeing the difference that you're making to a customer, or out there in the real world outside of.
That's right, exactly.
But also, it's a good point there that in some ways there's more growth, potential without those kind of, you are a tester, so you will only do testing. Without those kind of strict lines, actually, there's more opportunity to learn about different areas and grow your own skill set, isn't there? So
exactly. Everybody's a tester. Everybody's a developer. Everybody's a sysadmin. Blur those core skills.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so our time is probably up, but I always like to, and I'm surprising you a bit here, I always like to ask people for their one top tip with how to get started. So if someone, is managing maybe quite a siloed organization, or they're in a siloed organization, what would your kind of number one tip be for what they could do to start changing that?
So if it's a managerial role, I would say get working on it now. Don't fire up the, if you like, request cycle to be entitled to do this. If you've got any team structures that you're responsible for at all, identify those 2 or 3 individuals that will already be wanting to do this. Isolate, give them, ring fence them if you like, and give them the discretion to go ahead. So anybody in a managerial role, quickly give somebody some autonomy to do something, because you will learn an awful lot. You will absolutely learn an awful lot. And I would do that before you engage, consultants or coaches, or, find out what your team can do, because they're probably already doing it. And that will get you very quickly underway. For those that are not in a managerial role, but, the individual practitioners, I would say seek out your peers. Get this stuff working in any event. So again, the best teams I've worked with, they typically have kind of come forward, if you like, as a group. And so we've already been working with this in the background, but we can't find the sponsorship to do it. So, find your peers and get this stuff working for your organization. Demonstrate it. Never underestimate the power of demonstration. Get that put together and demonstrate it to someone.
Now, what's really interesting there is in both cases, you're kind of saying you've probably got the people who are capable of doing this.
Absolutely.
It's almost a question of getting out of the way. And
right.
Just this last night, I saw a slide someone produced, and it was I think Netflix had presented their DevOps approach and all the great things they were doing, and someone in the audience said, "Yeah, but that will never work here because we've not got the superstar engineers that you've got." And Netflix responded by saying, "Well, we hired them from you, and
exactly,
and we just got out of their way."
It's exactly true. It's entirely true.
Just by coincidence, is almost exactly what you've said.
That's
there.
right.
Actually,
they're already with you. Don't underestimate that. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, fantastic. So that's a brilliant note to end on. So again, you're giving a presentation about this at Cloud and DevOps World in a few weeks' time, not years.
Yep.
So I'm sure it'll be cracking. I'm going to be there certainly.
Good. Yeah.
So thanks again, Finbarr, for taking some time to talk to us on this chat, and I'm very much looking forward to the Twitter discussion that we have on Thursday night. Thanks very much.
Likewise. Okay, catch up then. Thank you.
Cheers.